to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where each gentle tale is an invitation to soften, to loosen the day from your shoulders, and to drift toward rest. Tonight's story is about a hidden garden and a legendary resting place known as the Bed of 1,000 Petals, where even the busiest thoughts learn how to be quiet. Settle in the way your body most wants to settle. Let the bedding hold you, as if it has been waiting all day to cradle you again. If it feels comfortable, allow your jaw to unclench, your tongue to rest, your eyebrows to smooth. Notice how the room feels around you. The hush, the stillness, the soft weight of the air. Breathe in slowly, as if sipping warmth, and breathe out, as if you are placing something down. With each exhale, imagine one small worry setting itself aside, not solved, not wrestled with, simply set down for later. You do not have to carry everything into the night. Let your attention drift to simple sensations. The steady support beneath you, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the ease that begins to gather when you stop trying to arrive anywhere else. You are here, and here is enough. Now, as your breathing finds a quieter rhythm, imagine a path appearing in your mind's eye, softly lit, safe, and unhurried. It winds toward a place that asks nothing of you, a place made for letting go. As you follow it, the story will begin to tell itself farther and farther away from effort, closer and closer to sleep. In a valley tucked between old hills, where morning fog liked to linger and the wind spoke in slow, thoughtful sighs, there was a village that seemed to have been built from patience. Roofs wore moss like velvet caps. The windows glowed with lamplight that looked like honey. Along the lanes, stones lay smooth from many years of gentle footsteps, and the air always carried the faintest trace of herbs drying on windowsills. The villagers rose with the sun and greeted it without hurry. They swept their stoops, warmed their hands around steaming cups, and listened to the soft chatter of sparrows as if it were important news. Even the clocks here seemed to tick more quietly, as though they had learned respect for rest. Among the villagers was a wanderer named Elowen, though wanderer was less a job than a way of breathing. Elowen did small errands for neighbors, mended a fence when asked, carried baskets from the market to the elderly, and spent long stretches walking the meadows simply to watch the light move over grass. There was a calm steadiness to Elowen's presence, as if the world did not need to be pushed, only noticed. Yet lately, even in this peaceful valley, sleep had begun to feel a little distant for Elowen. Not dramatically so, nothing sharp, nothing alarming, only a sense that dreams had taken a step back, as if standing behind a curtain. At night, Elowen would lie in bed and feel the body growing heavy, feel the limbs relaxing, but the mind would remain like a lantern left burning. Thoughts would drift through. Small, unfinished tasks, echoes of conversations, a memory of wind in a different place. Not painful thoughts, just persistent ones, like leaves that refuse to stop rustling. One evening, as dusk poured lavender and gold across the rooftops, Elowen visited the village apothecary. The shop was narrow and warm, lined with jars of dried petals and seeds. Bundles of rosemary hung from beams overhead. The apothecary, an elderly woman with silver hair pinned in a loose knot, looked up from her mortar and smiled, with the kind of smile that made a person feel seen, not examined. "You've been carrying wakefulness," she said softly, as if naming a weather pattern. Elowen gave a small laugh. "It isn't heavy, just present." The apothecary nodded and sprinkled a pinch of something fragrant into a paper sachet. "Sometimes sleep needs an invitation that feels like magic," she murmured. "Not a potion to force it, a place to remind it." Elowen's eyes wandered to a faded tapestry on the wall. It showed a garden that looked more like a dream than a real place. Arched trees with moonlit leaves, a winding path of pale stones, and at the center a bed made entirely of petals, layered like a cloud. The apothecary noticed Elowen's gaze. "Ah," she said, voice turning softer still. "You've heard of it, then?" "Elowen has seen the picture in stories," Elowen admitted. "A bed of petals in a secret garden. People say you rest there and wake up with a quiet mind." "Not quite," the apothecary replied with a gentle chuckle. "People love to make things sound like cures. It's more like a remembering. The bed of 1,000 petals doesn't fix you. It simply holds you in a kind of stillness where you can stop gripping your thoughts. And in that stillness, sleep sometimes returns, the way a shy animal returns to a hand that stays open." Elowen felt a warm curiosity bloom, slow and careful. "Is it real?" The apothecary pressed the sachet into Elowen's palm. It smelled of chamomile and something deeper, like forest shade. "Real enough for those who find it," she said. "The garden appears to travelers who are ready to rest without demanding anything in return. It does not like being hunted. It likes being approached gently." Elowen's fingers curled around the sachet. "How would someone even begin?" "Go at twilight," the apothecary said. "Walk beyond the far meadow where the river turns and the willows dip their branches into the water. There is an old stone arch there, half hidden by ivy. Step through it with a quiet heart, and you may find yourself on a path that is not on any map." Elowen thanked her, and when the apothecary's hand touched Elowen's wrist, it was cool and reassuring, like river stones. That night, Elowen lay awake as usual for a while, listening to the hush of the house. But now, inside the wakefulness, there was a different feeling, a thread of possibility. The thought of a secret garden did not make the mind race. It made it soften, like hearing distant music and realizing it is a lullaby. The next evening, twilight came slowly, as it often did in the valley. The sky became a bowl of pale blue, then deepened into velvet, clouds blushed rose, then faded to pearl. Elowen wrapped a cloak around their shoulders and stepped outside. The village was settling. A door clicked shut. A candle flickered behind a window. Somewhere, a cat moved like a quiet shadow along a fence. Elowen walked past gardens of sleepy marigolds and herbs, past hedges that held the day's warmth, and out beyond the last cottage where the meadow opened like a wide, breathing green. The air smelled of damp earth and wild flowers. Crickets began their soft song, a patient rhythm that asked for nothing. Elowen's footsteps pressed down the grass and let it spring back behind, leaving no lasting mark. At the far meadow's edge, the river waited, darkening into a mirror for the first stars. The water moved steadily, unbothered by questions. Willows leaned over it, their branches trailing like long hair in the current. Elowen followed the riverbank until the bend appeared, just as the apothecary had said. There, half tangled in ivy and wild roses, was an old stone arch. It looked ancient, yet not crumbling, more as if time had decided to be gentle with it. Lichen patterned the stones in pale green maps. The archway was empty inside, framing only the dusky air beyond. And yet something about it felt like a doorway, in more ways than one. Elowen paused, letting a few breaths move in and out. The river whispered nearby. The willows sighed. Above, the first bright star held steady. Then, with no dramatic gesture, Elowen stepped through. The world changed in a way that felt less like a snap and more like a slow turning of a page. The air grew cooler and sweeter. The scent of roses deepened, and beneath it came another fragrance, night-blooming jasmine, and the green hush of leaves that had never known dust. Elowen stood on a path of pale stones, rounded and smooth, as if 1,000 gentle feet had passed this way, not wearing it down but polishing it. The path curved ahead, disappearing into a garden that shimmered with twilight as if it had its own sky. Trees arched overhead, their leaves thin and luminous, catching faint light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. The branches were decorated with small lantern-like blossoms, glowing softly as though they held captured moonbeams. The garden felt alive, but not in a noisy way. Alive like a sleeping animal, breathing slow, warm, and safe. Elowen walked without hurry. The stones underfoot were slightly warm as if they remembered the sun. On either side of the path, flowers opened as if greeting dusk. Their petals were deep indigo and pale silver, soft pink and faint gold. Some blossoms looked familiar, like lilies and violets, while others seemed invented by dreams. Spiraled blooms that held tiny pools of dew, star-shaped flowers with translucent edges, blossoms that fluttered gently as though they were breathing. As Elowen moved, a sound like distant chimes drifted through the air. It might have been wind in leaves, or it might have been the garden's own quiet music. Soon, a small figure appeared near the path, perched on a mossy stone, as if it had always been there. It was not a child, though it had a child's smallness. It was not quite an animal, though Its eyes were bright and curious. Its skin had the faint sheen of birch bark, and its hair was a tumble of petals and grass. Around its neck hung a necklace of tiny acorn caps. It looked up at Elowen with calm interest. "You came softly," it said, voice as light as a leaf. Elowen blinked, and in the blink, the mind tried to ask a dozen questions. But the garden's atmosphere made questions feel like heavy boots. Elowen let them drop away. "I came because I am tired," Elowen said simply. The little figure nodded with a seriousness that was almost solemn. "Tired is an honest word." It slid off the stone and stood on the path. "Do you know what you're looking for?" Elowen's gaze drifted forward. "A place to rest." "A bed," the figure said. "A bed that is not made of wood or wool, but of something gentler. The bed of 1,000 petals." Elowen felt a slow warmth spread in the chest, like relief. "Can you take me there?" The figure tilted its head. "I can walk beside you. The garden does not like being led, it likes being met." Then it smiled, and the smile was like a small dawn. "But you are already meeting it well." So Elowen continued along the path, and the small guardian, if that was what it was, walked beside, feet bare and silent on stone. They passed a pond whose surface held the sky like polished glass. Lily pads floated there, each one cradling a pale bloom. A fish moved beneath the surface, its scales shimmering like starlight. When it turned, the water caught the movement and turned it into gentle ripples that looked like soft laughter. They passed a grove of trees with trunks as smooth as carved ivory. From their branches hung long curtains of moss, and when a breeze moved through, the moss swayed slowly, like dancers who had all the time in the world. Elowen noticed that the longer they walked, the quieter the thoughts became, not because Elowen forced them to stop, but because the garden's hush was contagious. Each breath felt deeper, each blink felt longer. The guardian spoke now and then, not with information, but with simple observations. "Listen," it would say, and Elowen would hear the sound of petals settling, the sound of leaves exhaling. "Look," it would say, and Elowen would see how light gathered on the edge of a flower, how dew caught the faint glow. "Slow," it would say, and Elowen would feel the shoulders soften, the steps become even gentler. At last, the path curved around a hedge of sweet-smelling herbs, and a clearing opened ahead. In the center of the clearing was the bed of 1,000 petals. It was not raised high, not grand in the way of thrones or altars. It was low and welcoming, shaped like a wide nest. Its frame seemed woven from living vines that had decided to become a cradle. The vines were smooth and strong, and tiny leaves grew along them in a delicate pattern. The bed itself was layered with petals, so many that it looked like a small hill of softness. Petals of rose and peony, of lotus and magnolia, of flowers Elowen could not name. Some petals were velvety, some silky, some airy as feathers. They formed a surface that looked impossibly plush, yet natural, like a meadow that had learned to become a mattress. The petals shifted with a slow, subtle movement, as if they were settling into readiness, as if they had been waiting. Elowen stood still at the edge of the clearing, and the guardian watched quietly. "You do not have to do anything special," it said. "The bed will not test you. It will not ask you to be different. It will simply hold you." Elowen took a step forward, then another. The air around the bed felt warmer, scented with 1,000 gentle things. Sunlit gardens, rain on blossoms, honey drifting from a hive. When Elowen reached the bed, the petals lifted slightly like a soft sigh. The surface seemed to welcome, not resist. Elowen sat, and the petals arranged themselves beneath with perfect comfort, supporting without pushing. Elowen's breath caught, not in surprise but in relief. It felt like finding the exact posture that the body had been searching for. The guardian sat on the grass nearby, folding its legs, hands resting on its knees. Its presence was calm, like a candle that does not flicker. Elowen lay back slowly. The petals rose around the body, cradling shoulders, neck, hips, knees. Not confining, only holding in the way water holds a floating leaf. The cloak loosened. The muscles in the back softened one by one, as if each muscle had been a fist and was now opening. Above, the garden's sky deepened. Stars appeared, not sharp, but soft-edged, like lanterns seen through a veil. The glowing blossoms in the trees brightened slightly, offering a tender light. Elowen's eyes drifted closed. The mind tried out of habit to keep talking, but the bed's fragrance and softness made the thoughts feel distant. They became like birds flying far overhead, no longer perched and pecking. The guardian's voice came slow as a lullaby. "The bed of 1,000 petals listens," it said. "If you have something you do not want to hold anymore, you can let it fall into the petals. They will keep it safe until morning. And in the morning, you may find it has become lighter." Elowen did not answer. Elowen did not need to. In the quiet, the body understood. The chest rose, the chest fell. With each exhale, something loosened. A breeze moved through the clearing, carrying the scent of distant blossoms. Petals stirred gently, whispering against each other like soft fabric. The garden seemed to breathe in time with Elowen. Leaves lifted and settled. The pond far away reflected starlight in slow, patient waves. Time moved differently here. It did not march. It drifted. For a while, Elowen hovered in that sweet place between waking and sleep, where images begin to form without being chased. In that place, the bed's petals began to offer their own gentle visions. Elowen found himself in a field at dawn, though the body still lay in the garden. In the vision, grass wore beads of dew, and each bead held a tiny sunrise. A rabbit moved through the grass with quiet grace, pausing to sniff a wildflower. The whole field seemed to hum with peace. Then the field faded into a shoreline where the sea was calm and pale. Waves rolled in, smooth and unhurried. laying foam like lace on sand. A gull cried once far away, and the sound was not lonely but spacious. The shoreline softened into a forest path where sunlight fell through leaves in gentle patterns. Dust motes floated in the air like slow snow. Somewhere a stream laughed quietly, the sound muffled by moss. Elowen drifted from one soft scene to another, not trying to hold them. The petals seemed to know what kind of quiet the mind needed. Not emptiness, but gentle beauty. In the garden clearing, the guardian watched, eyes half-lidded. It did not interfere. It did not perform spells with dramatic gestures. Its magic was simply presence, simply protection, simply the assurance that nothing would startle. At some point, Elowen's eyes opened again, slow and heavy. The stars above looked closer now, as if the sky had leaned in. "How is it?" the guardian whispered. Elowen's voice was barely a breath. "Like being held by something that expects nothing from me." The guardian nodded as if that was the correct answer to a question no one had asked. "Then rest," it said, "and if thoughts come, let them pass like clouds. The bed does not mind clouds." Elowen's eyelids drifted down again. The petals continued their quiet work. They adjusted to the curve of a shoulder. They supported the hollow behind a knee. They warmed where warmth was needed, cooled where coolness soothed. In the village beyond the garden, far away in the valley, night had deepened into stillness. But here, in the hidden place, night felt kind and spacious. It did not press in, it invited. A moth with wings like pale velvet fluttered near the bed, drawn to the glowing blossoms. It moved in slow spirals, then settled on a leaf. The leaf did not tremble. Everything in the garden understood quiet. Somewhere, water dripped from a fern into the pond, creating a tiny ripple. The ripple spread and disappeared, not causing disturbance, only adding to the gentle pattern of sound. Elowen's breathing grew slower. The breath began to deepen into the belly. The hands relaxed, fingers uncurling. The face smoothed into softness. The guardian began to hum, so faint it might have been imagined. The hum was a simple melody that rose and fell like a rocking motion. It seemed to match the rhythm of the petals' whisper. In that humming, the last sharp edges of wakefulness rounded. The mind stopped scanning for what might happen next. The mind began to trust that nothing needed vigilance here. And as the trust grew, sleep drew nearer. The visions returned, but more gently now, less like scenes and more like feelings. Warmth, safety, the sensation of floating, the comfort of being in the exact right place at the exact right time. Elowen's thoughts, once busy like a marketplace, became quiet like a closed shop at night. The lanterns inside were still lit, but the doors were shut, and nothing demanded attention. The garden itself seemed to dim, as if it knew it was time. The glowing blossoms softened their light. The stars blurred slightly as though seen through sleepy eyes. The petals rose a little higher along Elowen's sides, not restricting but snugging, like a blanket settling into place. guardian whispered once more, voice barely brushing the air. "You are safe," it said. "You are held. You can let go." If Elowen heard those words, they heard them the way a dream hears a sound. Without analysis, without reply, only acceptance. In the quiet that followed, everything slowed. The breeze became a gentler thing, hardly moving the leaves. The pond became almost perfectly still, holding the stars without trembling. The garden's scents blended into one soft sweetness, like a memory of summer. Elowen's body sank deeper into the petal bed, as if the petals were a kind of warm sand cradling every contour. The chest rose and fell with long, steady breaths. The space between breaths lengthened, not strained, simply calm. The guardian's hum faded into silence. Not an empty silence, but a full one, the kind that feels like a soft room with thick walls, a silence that keeps you. Elowen drifted farther, and the clearing blurred at the edges. The vines of the bed, the glow of blossoms, the gentle shapes of leaves, everything softened into a dreamlike haze. The bed of 1,000 petals did what it was made to do. It held without gripping. It soothed without insisting. It let the mind become quiet in its own time. And somewhere deep inside that quiet, sleep unfolded, like a flower opening in the dark. Slow, natural, inevitable. Soon, Elowen was no longer hovering at the edge. Elowen was fully within rest, carried by petals, carried by peace, carried by the garden's ancient, patient calm. The stars watched kindly, the leaves kept their gentle vigil. The river beyond the arch continued to flow steady and sure, as if whispering, "All is well, all is well." And you too can feel that same whisper now. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Let your body be heavy. Let the day be far away, like a town seen from a distant hill. You do not need to walk back to it right now. There is only this softness, only this quiet, only this gentle drifting downward. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.